We're diving into a deeply detailed historical account of the Battle of Karbala today. Based on a really comprehensive source lecture, we're going to unpack an event that has literally echoed through centuries. But what's absolutely fascinating about this specific analysis is how it completely reframes the narrative. You see, instead of looking at this purely as a story of overwhelming sorrow and tragedy, which, let's be honest, is how it's so often remembered, the source challenges us to view it as the ultimate display of bravery, steadfastness, and resistance against oppression. It is, quite literally, a masterclass in choosing truth over fear.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand this historic stand, we're going to break this explainer down into 6 clear stages. 1. Courage, not just sorrow. 2. The demand for allegiance. 3. The betrayal in Kufa. 4. The stand at Karbala. 5. The ultimate sacrifice. And 6. An enduring legacy. So there's our roadmap.
All right, Section 1. Courage, not just sorrow. Redefining the narrative.
The source material actually kicks off with a very direct challenge to the common perception, right? Often, this historical event is narrated in a way that kind of makes Imam Hussain and his camp look like helpless victims, just cornered and pleading for their lives. The narrative gets entirely consumed by sorrow. However, the thesis presented here actively pushes back against all of that. The source argues that we've got to recognize this event not as passive victimhood, but as the highest possible standard of individual resilience. It's framed as a conscious, deliberate stand against a tyrant. Imam Hussain wasn't trapped into this. He made a resolute choice to stand his ground, providing the world with a permanent template for unyielding courage.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of that courage. When Imam Hussein's camp was eventually intercepted, his side consisted of just 72 individuals. Yazid's initial army opposing them? 22,000. Think about that for a second. The source emphasizes these staggering odds to highlight the unimaginable bravery required to not just face that army, but to absolutely refuse to back down. The opposing commander even asked for more troops because he knew the fierce, legendary lineage of bravery that Imam Hussein's small camp possessed.
Moving on to Section 2, the demand for allegiance, the political catalyst.
So how did they get to that point? Well, the confrontation actually began in Medina. Looking at the timeline, the crisis sparked with the passing of Muawiyah and the transfer of power to his son, Yazid. Knowing full well his rule would face legitimate opposition, Yazid operated in the shadows. He sent a secret letter to the governor of Medina demanding that Imam Hussain pledge allegiance to him immediately, before the public even knew about the transfer of power. Hussain was literally summoned in the middle of the night. But Hussain, totally aware of the political trap, absolutely refused to legitimize Yazid in secret. Realizing that staying would just force a violent confrontation right there in the sacred city, Imam Hussain made the strategic decision to leave Medina for Mecca to prevent bloodshed.
This quote from the source serves as the ideological anchor for Hussein's entire stand. When pressed in the governor's house, he boldly stated that he wouldn't hide behind closed doors. He wasn't just anyone, His endorsement carried immense religious and moral weight. If an unjust and tyrannical ruler was going to be legitimized, Hussain flatly refused to be the one to quietly rubber stamp it in the dark. Which brings us to Section 3, the betrayal in Kufa, a shift in Kufa.
While Imam Hussain was in Mecca, the geographical focus of our story shifts dramatically. Word of his resistance spread, and the people of Kufa, which was a major garrison city, reached out. The source vividly details that 3 full sacks of letters arrived, begging Imam Hussain to come and lead them against Yazid's oppressive rule. The speaker points out that, morally and religiously, Hussain had an obligation to respond to the desperate pleas of the people. So, to assess the reality on the ground, he sent his highly capable cousin, Muslim bin Aqil, as an emissary to Kufa.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the devastating speed of Kufa's betrayal. Initially, things looked incredibly promising. On day 1, 17,000 people pledged their support to Muslim bin Aqil. This quickly swelled to a peak of 40,000 supporters. But Yazid was swift. He dispatched a brutal new governor, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who immediately applied a ruthless mix of death threats and massive financial bribes. Overnight, the support completely evaporated. When Muslim bin Aqil stood for prayer the very next day, not a single person stood behind him. He was captured and executed, but not before sending word to Hussain that the people had turned.
That takes us to Section 4, the stand at Karbala. The grip tightens.
Despite the warning from Kufa, the caravan was already in motion. The grip of the siege tightened rapidly.
First, Hussein's caravan was intercepted by an opposing commander named Hur bin Yazid, forcing them to halt and make camp on the desolate plains of Karbala. By the 7th of Muharram, the enemy army resorted to a horrific tactic. They completely cut off the water supply to Hussein's camp. They denied water even to the animals and the small children. Finally, on the 9th of Muharram, the enemy delivered an ultimatum: pledge allegiance to Yazid or face total war. Hussain, maintaining absolute calm, simply requested one final night, not to negotiate but devoted entirely to prayer and connection with the divine.
But before the battle even commenced, a profound ideological victory actually occurred. The source contrasts the motivations on the battlefield beautifully here. Yazid's commander, Umar bin Saad, was purely motivated by worldly power. He was promised the governorship of the lush, wealthy region of Rai if he fought Hussein. On the other hand, we have Hur bin Yazid, the very man who first intercepted Hussein. Watching the dignity of Hussein's camp, Hur made a shocking choice. He abandoned his high rank in Yazid's massive army and defected to Hussein's tiny camp of 72, famously stating he was choosing heaven over worldly power.
Section 5. The Ultimate Sacrifice. The 10th of Muharram.
This takes us to the darkest, yet easily the most courageous chapter. The source provides a heart-wrenching, incredibly detailed account of the staggering loss Hussein faced, focusing specifically on his immediate family. But again, it frames each loss as a roaring display of bravery. Qasim, who was only 16 years old, fought fearlessly, taking down dozens of men. Ali Akbar, known as the spitting image of the Prophet, fought fiercely until he was overwhelmed. Even the innocent 6-month-old infant Ali Asghar was struck with an arrow, and Abbas bin Ali, the camp's standard-bearer, lost both of his arms in a desperate, heroic attempt to fetch water for the crying children. The source emphasizes that these weren't merely casualties. They were conscious, willing sacrifices in a deliberate stand against tyranny.
Finally, Imam Hussein himself rode onto the battlefield. After fighting with legendary valor, wounded and completely exhausted, the time for prayer arrived. The source recounts that Hussein descended from his horse, performed dry ablution with the hot sand, and laid his head down in a state of prostration. The explainer really highlights how, even amidst unimaginable battlefield chaos and overwhelming grief, his unwavering focus remained entirely on his spiritual duty, offering his life while in total submission to God.
And our final stage, Section 6, An Enduring Legacy, the Aftermath. The battle ended, but the story definitely didn't. The surviving women and children were taken in chains to Damascus. So the crucial point is what happened next in the court of Yazid. Hussein's sister, Bibi Zainab, stood before the tyrant, and despite her profound grief, her voice was thunderous. The source highlights her fearless address, quoting her as saying, "You boast today, but let a few days pass. No one will even send blessings upon your brave, while my brother's name will echo from pulpits until the day of judgment." According to the speaker, through her unparalleled strength, she secured the final ideological victory. She ensured that the narrative of Karbala was not buried in the sand, but broadcasted to the entire world.
Which brings us to the speaker's final, lingering challenge. You see, the story of Karbala isn't just history, it's an active lesson. If this event is truly a masterclass in choosing truth over fear,